Thanks, Azwi. Agri SA has raised concerns about the impact of load shedding on the agricultural sector. Farmers say with the worsening of power cuts, farmers are increasingly being forced to purchase diesel and petrol for generators at a tremendous financial burden. As the harvesting season approaches, the agricultural sector is appealing for tax rebates and a respite from load shedding. Farmers say it will be difficult to meet deadlines and exportation will most likely be affected by load shedding. Meanwhile, the impact of frequent power cuts has been crippling to most industries, whether it's mining, retail, technology, or the industrial sector. Now, joining us on Zoom to touch on this subject is Dr Arno van Niekerk. He is a lecturer of International Economics and Financial Markets at the University of the Free State. Dr. van Niekerk, a very good morning to you. A warm welcome to Morning Live. I mean, it's been a difficult time considering the escalation of prices, whether it's diesel or fuel in general, which went out of control this year. How has this impacted the farmers and the farming industry?
Good morning, Lebo. Yes, indeed, it has been a major concern. I think the most important factor in this is, the fact that despite the production cost that has increased, it is the inconsistency in power supply and the uncertainties it is causing farmers around the country. We are approaching and we are in harvest season, and that stretches until March. And many of the farmers, about 80% of farmers depend on Eskom's provision of electricity. So this is a huge concern. And also farmers, the production costs have been climbing through diesel, and many of the other input costs have been rising. But the concern is now, once you get the crop and you harvest it and the crop from the field, it needs to be cooled, it needs to be taken care of, and all of that requires electricity. And I think that is a main concern to many farmers. And considering also that farming has contributed by far the most in the previous GDP figures by Stats SA to the growth of the economy. And I think even from a food security point of view, it is critical that farmers are given some support by government or by Eskom in order to accommodate, sufficient harvests.
Is it possible, though, to quantify the extent of, financial losses or expenditure incurred by the agricultural sector due to the frequency of load shedding?
Yeah, it's difficult to have exact quantification, but I think just to give you an idea, for farmers to move towards renewable energy or completely get off the grid, it costs between 500,000 and R1 million in order to do that. So the implication of losses in farming, this adds up to millions. Of course, in different provinces, it's different in terms of, the Western Cape, the focus is a bit more the fruit and the Free State, the grains, for instance, and many other parts in the agricultural sector. But it adds up to really millions, and especially the, regulations regarding the waste and, many of the waste food that can't be used, so it is tough on farmers. They are right in the middle of a bottleneck situation, and yes, of course, it would help a lot if they could save many of those costs through more consistency in load shedding.
Mm-hmm. And the agricultural sector was dominant in supporting the latest GDP figures for the third quarter of 2022, which showed, that agriculture, forestry and fishing industry increased by 19.2%, contributing 0.5% to the GDP. What do you attribute that performance in such a trying time as the current one of South African industry with all the power cuts imposed by Eskom?
Yes, actually, I think the country can be thankful for having that performance in the agricultural sector. Mostly, I think the good rainfalls around the country have contributed to this, and also, good planning from the farmers' side. I think that assisted, and then just, in terms of getting the harvest of the fields, and also, making sure that that the process of exporting this and getting this into the market is done properly. I think that contributes a lot. But yeah, the 20% almost contribution and growth in the agricultural sector, I mean, that is really what has been keeping the economy growing. Remember the job creation and all the other secondary sectors that are affected through the agricultural sector, they all benefit through this. And it's important in trying times to have food security in place. So I think this is the main concern, that at least the performance by the agricultural sector needs to be consistent and even up, because we've been expecting and getting good rainfalls all the way. So we are expecting good harvests, but I think it's a question of farmers asking the rest of the role players in the supply chain, even Eskom, to play its part as well, and government in the form of important rebates that's necessary in order to keep the industry growing.
Dr. van Niekerk, what is the contribution of the sector to the economy when we're not talking about issues of, load shedding? I mean, when the environment is normal and conducive, what numbers are we talking here?
Yeah, it is really significant. So the agricultural sector, I mean, it varies from year to year, whether there's drought and whether there's weather conditions play a big part in this. But the average contribution is up in the billions. In terms of production, as I said, different provinces, different sectors in the agricultural sector, subsectors contribute differently. But I think the main thing is the fact that it creates jobs, the fact that it creates consistency, and the fact that, we earn a lot through exports in our agriculture. There has been problems in the European market, so it's not just, let's say, consistency at home, but also overseas in the foreign markets. That's important. And when all of that are in line and well calibrated, the agricultural sector is a huge proportion of creating economic stability in South Africa.
Have we ever had a situation where the conditions were perfect? You didn't have the international stress, or you didn't have the local stress where we're talking about load shedding?
Yeah, there's never been a perfect situation. I think there have been times where there's been a bit more stability, but even, political instability, small factors play a role in the agricultural sector, because it affects worker productivity, it affects farmers committing long-term, it affects also in terms of policy making. So I think many farmers have been struggling in terms of getting the right policies on the table from government side, but then also, making sure that, export markets stay in line. So it has been always a struggle. But I think the thing is with farmers and the farming industry is that there's a tenacity and there's a will to succeed, and it affects not just the farms themselves, but also the broader communities in those farming areas. And I think that provides the opportunities for at least, some economic development in local areas, which has tremendous secondary value in the economy.
I mean, the challenge that it is not only the farming industry that is going through these challenges. Most of the industries that support the country's economy, whether, mining or the food retail sector that normally sells perishable goods like farming or any other sector, can argue that they also need a respite. What do you make of this?
Yeah, that's a very fair assumption, and I think many other sectors are also feeling the brunt of the economic crisis. Thankfully, due to the latest GDP figures, we're not in a recession, but we might go into a recession if inflation keeps on going up and interest rates and the costs side of the economy. I think it all depends on government's capacity to be able to give these rebates, the social grants, and there's a lot of factors that depend on government. So I think it's literally in terms of priority, and the government will need to decide. I mean, when farming industry are in a harvesting season, you would expect government to maybe give a bit more rebates during that important season, but then other industries might have, other times where they also need support from government. So I think this is really a time where economic collaboration is absolutely necessary, and for the public sector to play its part. Other sectors of the economy will definitely benefit from the farming sector being supported, and vice versa, farming benefiting. But I think a key factor, of course, is capacity, electricity capacity to improve drastically. And whether the route is towards privatization of this industry, the energy sector, that is, or whatever, but there needs to be solutions, because otherwise the dependency on government will just increase from all the other sectors. So this is a key factor in the whole growth and sustainable growth of the economy.
And speaking of government and how they can help, there is word that government is trying to consider providing tax relief to the farmers who, invest in their own security systems as well. What is your view on this, and will it at least assist to a certain extent?
Yeah, it will, of course. It will bring down costs for farmers. Remember, I think one of the other factors is because of the increased risks, the insurance costs have gone up as well, and many insurance companies are unwilling to cover certain costs that normally would have been covered. All of those factors are coming down to the farmer, because the farmer is the one that needs to produce. So he needs to cover all of that. So if he can get some tax support or benefits from government side, it will really help. In uncertain times, the security systems absolutely, it costs a lot, because you also need social stability in order to have successful farming taking place. So I think it's absolutely important, and it will help farmers a lot. The factor is just, the uncertainty of government decision making, especially in these times. You need policies in place. You need agreements that can last, not short-term, just incentives. So consistency is very important in this industry, and I think that's what farmers are looking for. And it's not just for their own benefit, it is in order to provide better contribution to the economy, so that other sectors can be supported and benefit from the growth in the agricultural sector.
And then just finally, Dr. van Niekerk, what is the practical thing to do for the industry, given the plight of the industry?
Well, the practical thing is, of course, to work to get organized in terms of its applications, to get clarity on what they expect from government and also from Eskom, and to have a collective voice in this, whether it's through Agri SA or some of the other agricultural organizations. I think it's important that government get a clear picture of the needs of farmers, and then also, having collaborations. What can farmers do then to contribute to lessen the weight on government? I think this is how you build a collaborative economy, and then through that to have partnerships and collaboration in place, and also to support workers more. I mean, this is really for the benefit of everybody, but eventually it asks collaboration and clarity in terms of expectations.
All right. Dr. Arno van Niekerk, thank you so much for talking to us. He is a lecturer of international economics and financial markets for undergraduate and postgraduate levels at the University of the Free State. He was discussing the impact of load shedding on the agricultural sector.